We're in the battle, but the sound of the Lord's victory is echoing from heaven and from the new heaven and the new earth, and we can hear the sound. It's faintly, but it's drawing us to itself. That glory is almost here, that life is almost here, that the new heaven and the new earth are almost here.
Pastor Brian Wolfmiller speaking at the 2026 Issues Etc. Making the Case Conference.
And when the fight is fierce and the warfare long, steals on the ear that distant triumph song, and then hearts are brave and arms are strong.
For a contribution of $250 by Labor Day, we'll send you a link to watch an on-demand video stream and download audio recordings of all this year's conference, including Pastor Wolfmiller's teaching on Christian courage. Learn more at issuesetc.org or call 618-223-8385.
I think the fate of Christianity in Europe should be very, very sobering for Christians in America and make them realize that nothing can be taken for granted at this point.
What you actually can affirm for your child is you are baptized. You don't need to be defined by this gender dysphoria that's nagging at you and trying to get you to carve up your body and make all these changes. You are actually defined by what God says.
Union with the flesh of Jesus. There is nothing greater than that. And American evangelicalism cannot say that. It's a disembodied Christ. There's no Jesus in the water, Jesus in the Word, Jesus in your ear, Jesus in your mouth.
All of the Lutherans from the very beginning to the very end teach not only that good works are to be done, but even the necessity of good works.
Grocery clerks in Tennessee love listening to Issues Etc.
Well, it appears that for the time being, artificial intelligence is here to stay, and we're really only at its beginning. Where will it go, and has it been given as a tool for the church to use as well as for the world to often abuse? Welcome back to Issues Etc., coming to you live from the studios of Lutheran Public Radio in Collinsville, Illinois. I'm Todd Wilkin. Thanks for tuning us in. We're going to talk about Pope Leo XIV's encyclical on artificial intelligence. Dr. Gene Edward Veith joins us. He's retired provost and professor of literature at Patrick Henry College, adjunct professor at Luther Classical College. He previously served as culture editor for World Magazine. He's director of the Cranach Institute at Concordia Theological Seminary, Fort Wayne, Indiana, co-author of a forthcoming book, Irreplaceable, Humanity, Vocation, and the Limits of Technology, and author of a recent column for the Lutheran Witness magazine titled The Pope Underestimates AI. Dr. Veith, welcome back.
Yeah, thanks for having me again.
You compare Pope Leo's 2026 encyclical on artificial intelligence to Pope Leo XIII's 1891 encyclical on the Industrial Revolution. Unpack that for us.
Yeah, well, Pope Leo XIII tried to address the Industrial Revolution, rights of workers, the technology of that time, a lot of the issues that were going on, labor unions and the new capitalism and all of that. So it's clear that the new pope, the new American pope, took Leo's name. Now he's Leo XIV, and he's trying to address today's technology kind of in the same terms. The problem that I have with encyclical, among other things, is that he really doesn't do that. He tries to apply the industrial encyclical, workers' rights and exploiting rich people, exploiting poor people, and tries to apply that to this post-industrial technology that's very different and has completely different challenges than the technology of the 1890s. So to me, his analysis doesn't really work very well. For example, he's worried about the rich exploiting workers. Well, the issue with AI is that work itself is changing. The workers that Pope Leo XIV was concerned with, the blue-collar manual laborers, it's been said that under AI, after the AI revolution, they'll be the only ones with job security. It's the white collar jobs, the middle class jobs, managers, lawyers, even doctors. Those are the ones that are threatened by the new AI revolution. And Pope Leo doesn't really deal with that. It's not just about work and workers. It's what will AI do to work in general? Some tech proponents are saying, oh, AI will eliminate the need for anybody to work. We'll have to have government guaranteed income for everybody, and it will free us from labor completely. Now, that has so many problems and so many issues about it, but the encyclical doesn't really deal with issues like that. It's trying to fit new technology into the pattern of an old technology and an old economy that really has little to do with what we're facing now.
You say that this encyclical is very Catholic. How so?
Well, for one, it says a lot about the gospel, but it's clear it's not the gospel of Jesus Christ's atoning work on the cross for forgiveness of sins. It follows the definition of the gospel in the Catholic Catechism that says the gospel is the new law, the perfection here on earth. I'm quoting here the Catechism. The perfection here on earth of the divine law is expressed in the Sermon on the Mount. So you'll notice when Catholics talk about the gospel, they tend to mean Sermon on the Mount, moral perfection on earth. And so it's really a new way of putting in a very idealistic view of law, an almost utopian vision of how we'll all love each other and society will be the way God intended, kind of leaving out sin and forgiveness. Not that you don't find those things in Catholicism, but the emphasis of this encyclical is on this world, a social gospel. You also see that desire to continue this tradition of Catholic social doctrine. And so it's very much filled with references to the Church's solidarity with workers, solidarity with the poor, and a lot of very much this worldly terms. Says very little about salvation and sin and Christ's victory over sin on the cross. So you don't really get that in this encyclical.
Does the document have much to say about what artificial intelligence might do to humanity? You touched upon that earlier.
Yeah, well, it really doesn't say very much about the very issues that people are concerned about. In religion, for example, it doesn't give any guidance about whether pastors or priests using AI to write sermons, what are the parameters, using it just for research or organization or writing the thing for them. And it says nothing about what's happening now. People are turning to AI for spiritual guidance. Instead of talking to a pastor to get pastoral care, they're looking to AI to give them pastoral care. And some are talking about when AI is perfected and it becomes a super intelligence that will know all things, there's an AI religion growing up. And it's already, people are theologizing about AI as the God who will solve our problems for us, who will fix the world, who will control the world. He says nothing about the threat that some people have, and including some of the AI pioneers, that AI may become so massive and so billion times greater than a human being that it might consider us just parasites and wipe out the human race. I don't think it will do that, but that's what people are worried about. And that's including people who are developing it, and they keep developing it anyway, despite what they see as its threat to the very existence of human life on Earth. But he doesn't really address any of that, even to calm people down or give solace or say how to counter some of these bad things. And so to me, it was a great disappointment. He's trying to bring morality to bear on AI, which desperately needs to happen. But unfortunately, the Pope doesn't really do that in this encyclical.
How is Catholic social doctrine updated in this encyclical?
Well, today's Catholic social doctrine imports a lot of kind of contemporary progressive issues into what Pope Leo XIII did in the 1890s. Yes, workers' rights. Yes, treat people with dignity. Yes, social justice. But it takes kind of the definition of social justice from today's progressivism, environmentalism, the importance of diversity, the importance of equity. And so you have a lot of things imported kind of from the typical progressive platforms of today's left-leaning politicians brought into that social justice tradition that the Catholic Church has formed over the years, kind of giving it a new flavor. But again, I don't know that it really addresses the specific issues even of our day, but particularly of AI and what that might do.
Does Pope Leo adequately address the other new challenges of AI that you mentioned before?
Well, I don't think he does. He says a lot about human dignity. The title of his encyclical is The Magnificence of Humanity, translated into English. And so he focuses on that and worries about AI kind of defining how we think about humans. Now, in this, I think he makes some good points. Talk about artificial intelligence and think that if a machine is intelligent enough and just add more and more intelligence, the assumption is that's what defines human beings. And if it gets more and more intelligent, then it will become conscious, and then it will develop a freedom of its own will, and it will act on its own. But again, the Pope points out quite rightly that it isn't intelligence that defines being human. And sometimes when we think in those terms, that affects the way we treat real humans, so that those who are not, quote, intelligent, not the smartest ones, that there's a danger of putting them down. No, human beings have a value because they were created in the image of God, even though our sin effaces that image, are loved by God, or someone for whom Christ died, and that needs to be central. And I do think artificial intelligence transgresses humanity. In other words, by taking over all of our work, well, human beings need to work. We have vocations. Machines don't have vocations. It's one reason why pastors shouldn't use AI to write their sermons. AI doesn't have a calling from God to write sermons or do any other kind of ministry. And just point by point, I think it threatens humanity if we're not very careful. Now, the technology of artificial intelligence has been going on for a long time, and at first it was designed as a tool. Here's a way we can do translation very quickly. Here's a way we can do internet searches very quickly. And it was designed for very specific purposes. But then came the idea let's build a super intelligence that transcends all human limits. And this idea of this super intelligence, I think, goes beyond what AI was originally designed for, and it turns it into something else, and something that is kind of threatening. The Pope had a good line he said that we shouldn't think that human limits are always something that we need to overcome. We have limits because we're human beings, and we need limits. And to try to overcome them really is a way to sort of break out of our humanity, trying to become gods. A lot of the people that write about AI talk about its infinite, it will have infinite knowledge and it will be infinitely powerful. Again, ascribing God-like characteristics to it. We don't want our machines to be gods, and we don't want ourselves to be God. And a lot of people are getting very confused when they try to kind of think in those terms.
We're talking with Dr. Gene Edward Veith about Pope Leo XIV's Encyclical on artificial intelligence. Does it give sufficient guidance to congregations? What do Jesus and Paul teach about marriage, divorce, unchastity, and desertion? The Issues Etc. book of the month for July is Divorce and Remarriage, Ecclesiastical Discernment and Pastoral Care. This new resource is published by Concordia Publishing House. Their phone number, 1-800-325-3040. You can learn more about divorce and remarriage at issuesetc.org. Divorce and Remarriage by Dr. Ben Mays. The Issues Etc. book of the month for July.
This fallen creation is bested by tornado, hurricane, flood, pandemic, and more. LCMS Disaster Response helps our congregations, their pastors, and other church workers to reach out to their members and neighbors with mercy which flows from Christ to altar. We offer quality volunteer training, help for congregational readiness and response, and disaster grant funding. To learn more, visit lcms.org/disaster. That's lcms.org/disaster.
Equipping the priesthood of all believers. You're listening to Issues, Etc.
Confessional, liturgical, traditional, Lutheran, biblical Christianity. If this is what you're looking for in a church, and you find yourself in the South Tucson area, the Saints at Mount Olive Lutheran Church would love for you to join us Sunday morning at 9 for Bible study and 10 for divine service. I'm Pastor Isaac Wertz, and at Mount Olive, the pastor wears vestments, the liturgy is chanted, the chalice is available every week, but most importantly, the Word of God is rightly preached and the sacraments rightly administered. God bless you and your family this season and every season.
Confessional Lutherans are invited to rent a 4-bedroom, 3-bathroom Table Rock lakefront home in the Ozarks. Table Rock Lake is a premier lake in the heart of the Ozarks for boating, water sports, and fishing. This log cabin-style rental sleeps 12 and is 30 minutes from Branson and 20 minutes from Silver Dollar City. Learn more by calling Swanson Estates 713-855-2681. Be sure to mention Issues Etc. 713-855-2681.
Welcome back. I'm Todd Wilkin. Dr. Gene Edward Veith is our guest, co-author of a forthcoming book, Irreplaceable, Humanity, Vocation, and the Limits of Technology. We're talking about Pope Leo's Encyclical on artificial intelligence. Does the encyclical give sufficient guidance to congregations on this subject?
Well, we do need moral guidance about what is legitimate use of this new technology and what isn't. What should pastors or priests do with technology? It can be a help in Bible study and in other things and in gathering information. But where do we need to draw the lines? What should we not use it for? And people are just begging for help, not just in the church, but in business and schools and education. And this is an opportunity, I think, for Christians to offer some good guidance that people are desperate for. But I'm just afraid that in this case, the Pope kind of missed that opportunity. He gives a lot of moralistic pronouncements. It's interesting that the tech people, the heads of all the AI companies, their reaction to the encyclical, they're all very respectful and, oh, okay, yes, well, that's good advice. That's good for us to think about. But I think they were glad to read it because it didn't really put any limits on them on what they should do or what the public thinks they should do. It was all very abstract, very affirming of the status quo in many ways. Yes, sir, we should use it morally, but what does that mean exactly? And exploiting the poor. We're not going to exploit the poor. He even made a statement that one of the concerns is that this technology be made available to everyone, not just the rich, but to the poor. And we should have education to teach the poor how to use this also. Well, again, that's not the problem. AI is becoming ubiquitous everywhere. And it isn't that people need to learn how to use it. The question is, how is it using us? What will AI do to education when students can use AI to do all of their homework for them, write all of their papers for them, to give them access to everything they need so they don't have to learn it themselves? Read something recently that said, looked at the study, how the cognitive workings of students when they do their work with AI actually goes down. It said AI can do great things, but it's making us stupider. Again, we need to face up to that and maybe find a way to use it that doesn't make us stupider. But again, this encyclical doesn't really offer much help with that.
What is the proper Lutheran response to the multifaceted challenge that artificial intelligence is presenting to almost all of us?
Well, I've worked with Lutheran pastor Trevor Sutton, who knows he's a real expert on technology. We got a book coming out on technology and vocation. And I think vocation can help us understand this. Technology itself is a tool. And Luther has some interesting things to say about tools, using tools in our vocation, how you can use tools to help love and serve your neighbor. And so our book looks at technology in general, not just AI, but it comes around to AI and looks at it quite a bit. And there's a lot about it that goes beyond using it as a tool. And as we said, it starts to use us. When AI starts acting human, when people start forming relationships with AI, when they fall in love with their AI chat box, as it's happening more and more, as they get advice from the chat bots, even when the chat bots counsel somebody to commit suicide. That's happened numerous times with young people, and it's tragic. We have to realize what human beings are, what our vocations are, what our callings are, and not let anything usurp our vocations. Again, a computer program doesn't have a calling to be a pastor or to be a parent or to be a teacher for that matter, or to be a psychologist or many of these other things. Now, psychologists and pastors and parents, there are ways you can use AI, I think, in a legitimate way, but it's a very dangerous kind of tool that takes some real discernment and real care and real crafting. I think it's possible to craft AI so that it doesn't do the harmful things where it oversteps its bounds and is in tight control of the human person using it. That's what it has to be. And if the control isn't there, Christians need to learn how to use it with the correct discipline. But we always need to stay grounded in the real world. I read something recently that talks about how not just AI, but our digital technology is sort of doing the opposite of of what Christians do. Christianity is about the Word become flesh, God entering the tangible, real world. Our sacramental theology is about how God uses matter, bread, wine, water, to reach us. But the whole approach in the digital world is to deny the physical, to create a virtual reality that we must end up mistaking for actual reality. And we can't let that happen. This book said that we need to always stay grounded in this physical world, this creation that God made, rather than try to replace it with a creation that sinful human beings made in our pathetic attempt to kind of become gods of our own and to create machines in our image, just as God created human beings in his image. It's not the same. And you've got to keep those distinctions very clear.
You're connected to Issues, Etc. I'm Todd Wilkin. We're talking to Dr. Gene Edward Veith about his recent column for the Lutheran Witness magazine, The Pope Underestimates AI. You can receive an annual digital and print subscription to the Lutheran Witness for less than $25. Learn more at witness.lcms.org or by calling Concordia Publishing House 1-800-325-3040. Interpreting the World from a Lutheran Perspective, the Lutheran Witness magazine. So at this point, what is artificial intelligence good for?
The church's music from the 2nd century.
Shepherd of tender youth, guiding in love and truth.
The 6th century. The 12th century. The 16th century. The 21st century. The best of the church's music from the past 2,000 years. LutheranPublicRadio.org.
The Lutheran Church Missouri Synod cares deeply for those who protect our nation. Are you or a loved one currently serving? Ministry to the Armed Forces would like to help. We provide devotional literature to encourage faith. Send your mailing address to lcmschaps@lcms.org or call us at 314-996-1337. Those in uniform are comforted with Psalm 28. The Lord is my strength and my shield. My heart trusts in Him, and He helps me.
What can we learn about the worship practices of the first Lutherans from a Reformation edict by a Calvinist leader? Find out in Will Whedon's column in the latest Issues, Etc. journal. We'll send it to you for free. Just click the red journal subscription button at issuesetc.org and enter your email address. In the Wittenberg Trail feature, Pastor Michael Hughes writes about his journey from progressive Lutheranism to confessional Lutheranism. The Issues, Etc. journal. Subscribe for free at issuesetc.org.
Your lifeline to the Lutheran worldview. You're listening to Issues, Etc.
Thanks to the following congregations for standing with us by becoming an Issues, Etc. congregational sponsor: Our Savior Lutheran, Grand Rapids, Michigan; Trinity Lutheran, Mount Vernon, Washington; St. Paul Lutheran, Indianapolis, Indiana; Lutheran Church of the Cross, Rockville, Maryland; Emmanuel Lutheran, Houston, Texas; Christ Lutheran, Sioux Falls, South Dakota; Prince of Peace Lutheran, St. Louis, Missouri; Good Shepherd Lutheran, Collinsville, Illinois; St. John Lutheran, Ray, Michigan; and Mount Calvary Lutheran, Brady, Texas. Find out how your confessional Lutheran church can support this worldwide outreach by including Issues, Etc. in your mission or advertising budget. Just go to issuesetc.org, click Support Donate, and print a one-page flyer. When your congregation becomes an Issues, Etc. sponsor, We'll publicize your church on the podcast, at our website, and in the Issues Etc. journal. Dr. Jean Edward Veith is our guest. We're talking about Pope Leo XIV's encyclical on artificial intelligence. Given your good counsel before the break, Dr. Veith, at this point in the technology, what is artificial intelligence good for when it comes to loving and serving our neighbor?
Yeah, and that's the criteria. How does it help us serve our neighbor better? Well, you can use AI to save time. The great thing about it is it can go through an enormous amount of information, sorting through, finding information you ask for in just a blink of an eye, or something that would take hours to dig up on your own. And in that sense, it can be helpful. It can do things for us just like other tools have extended our powers. So I think if we can avoid anthropomorphizing it, and of course the models that the developers are making are trying to make it more human, are anthropomorphizing it as much as they can, it comes to a point where they're kind of ruining it and making it potentially deadly. So, we need lots of help. We need to think these things through. I'm personally a skeptic that it will become as powerful and all-pervasive as the developers are claiming it's going to be. For example, there are built-in limits or inevitable limits. Latest model that came out is supposedly so powerful that it can hack into any system. Well, if that happens, our whole economic order would be impossible. Somebody could hack into your bank account and take whatever they want, move it into their bank account. We cannot have that as a society. We can't let that happen. Releasing something into the wild that has the capability of bringing down the whole economy. The data centers, to do all the mental, so-called mental work that artificial intelligence has to do to be so powerful, it would take an enormous amount of data that we don't have, enormous expense in building more and more and larger data centers. It costs more and more billions and trillions of dollars that we don't have. Those are some things that are limits that we'll probably be bumping our heads up against before very long. Just limits to the technology in making it feasible or something that would be socially possible. But in the rubble of that, perhaps more modest standalone programs that can do one function or another function instead of trying to do everything for the whole human race. I think that would be a better kind of use of the possibilities of this technology and make it much less harmful, potentially.
I want to return to the theology of Pope Leo's encyclical, because my perusal of it seems to be, and you couched it in the sense that he's trying to extend the work of his predecessor, Pope Leo XIII, on the Industrial Revolution. There does seem to be an attempt to, as you said early on, make the gospel about the social fabric of society and improving man's lot there. Really, what would you call it? A social gospel.
Yeah.
Rather than the gospel of Jesus Christ.
That's right. And I mean, that's the fundamental issue with, frankly, Catholicism and many other versions of Christianity. They're religions of law, not gospel. The gospel may be in there somewhere, but they're sort of buried beneath everything else. So as Christians, it's very important that we keep focus on what's important, namely Jesus Christ and his work for us and the gifts he has for us to bring us to everlasting life. Yes, we live in the world, and God sends us into the world to live out our faith and love and service to our neighbor, send us in our vocations. We have vocations in all the estates God has designed in the church, the family, the state, as well as the workforce. And that gives human beings a meaning for their life in the world that not everyone has. And a lot of people are searching for that. And in the absence of God in their lives, they're trying to make technology their God. Luther said that whatever you trust in time of need, whatever you put your faith in, that's your God. So that in the Large Catechism, talking about the first commandment. And so technology is the God of so many people. That's what they're trusting. That's what they're looking to for answers. That's what they're looking to for their problems and for their blessings. But all of those fail. Human beings have tried so many alternatives to the real gospel, but none of them get us anywhere. And so as Christians, we need to keep those distinctions very close to our awareness, not let our need for faith get thrown off into something of the world, let alone a man-made God, which is what we mean by idolatry. But we need to hang on to God's word, hang on to his gifts and the sacrament, cling to Christ, and he will get us through, I think, the challenges that are before us, as long as we stay faithful to him and then hold on tight to his promises.
My concern, and I'm sure that you shared as well, Dr. Veith, is, and I realized this the other day, my grandchildren are going to grow up in a world, all of the things being equal, of course, having never known a world without artificial intelligence. It will be a different world than the one that you and I grew up in.
Yeah, it will. It will, depending on what happens with this technology. If the bubble bursts, that would probably bring the economy down. So much is invested in it, and it would be trials and tribulations. But that's right. We forget just how recent all of this radically changing technology is. It's just, I remember just a few years ago, I first saw ChatGPT, people doing kind of tricks with it. And now it's everywhere, and it's threatening or to change, the foundations of our lives and our economy. So what will that mean? I don't know. It's hard to say. We don't know what the future will hold. So again, we have to hold on to what is sure, what is permanent. We need to teach our children what's sure and what's permanent and what's real, and the difference between what's real and what's virtual, what's real and what's fake, and teach them to prefer what's real. Again, that's a hard challenge, but there have always been hard challenges for Christians and for parents, and God has always seen us through all of that.
What would you say to someone who says, well, Dr. Veith, I'm just going to do my best to avoid interacting with artificial intelligence at all?
Well, the people around you are interacting with it, and it's affecting them, and they will probably affect you in one way or another. The shops you go to, the economy that you're a part of, certainly you'll be everywhere in the digital world, tracking us and selling things to us. It'll be very hard to avoid. I think even for those who are really concerned and who just as soon have nothing to do with it, that may be a worthy thing to try, but it'll be hard to completely get away from it.
Dr. Jean Edward Veith is our guest. We're talking about Pope Leo's encyclical on artificial intelligence. He says the Pope at one point sounds almost Lutheran. We'll find out what he means next.
In making the case for the LCMS, I could channel Garrison Keillor and talk about Lake Wobegon and Pastor Inkvist's problems and the Picayunist troubles between the Missouri Synod and the other Lutherans. It would all be delightful. I could talk about potlucks and the smells wafting out of church basements on a Sunday morning.
Pastor Matt Harrison speaking at this year's Issues Etc. Making the Case conference.
But finally, that would all just fade away like so much pleasant aroma in the wind. Without Christ, without this public confession of Christ, it would all be for naught, all of it.
You can watch Pastor Matt Harrison's presentation, Making the Case for the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod, from our 2026 Making the Case conference. For a contribution of $250 by Labor Day, we'll send you a link to conference video and audio recordings. Order online at issuesetc.org.
Your comprehensive source for information, teaching, and truth. You're listening to Issues Etc.
Unity and variety can be a hot topic among Christians and Lutherans in particular, and the June-July issue of the Lutheran Witness takes this topic up with articles such as Unity and Variety Through the Ages by Richard Serena, Formed Together by Sean Dinzer, A Call to Faithful and Harmonious Variety in Worship, and much more. To get your copy, visit cph.org/witness or visit witness.lcms.org to learn more. The Lutheran Witness, helping you interpret the world from a Lutheran perspective.
Luther Academy provides additional theological education for our mission partners around the world, specifically pastors who are asking for additional education but do not have the necessary resources in their own church bodies. By donating to Luther Academy today, you will be supplying food, housing, books, professors, and travel for Lutheran pastors who attend our conferences. To learn more about Luther Academy and how you can donate today, visit lutheracademy.com. lutheracademy.com.
Have you ever wanted to enter a program that teaches right habits and intellectual rigor as you apprehend the beautiful, the good, and the holy, all the while learning classical languages and reading classical texts? Do you want to be a classical scholar? I'm Dr. Charles Schultz, the new leader of the Classical Lutheran Education Program at Concordia, Chicago. Learn more about this program at CUC by visiting cuchicago.edu, cuchicago.edu.
Welcome back. I'm Todd Wilkin. We're talking about Pope Leo's encyclical on artificial intelligence with Dr. Jean Edward Veith. You say that at one point Pope Leo makes a point that sounds almost Lutheran. What do you mean by that?
Yeah, well, he said something toward the very end where he talked about work being connected to God. And that sounded very close to the Lutheran doctrine of vocation, which teaches not just that we have callings that then we do to serve God and live out our faith, but that Luther taught that God actually works through human vocation, that he gives us our daily bread through the work of farmers and bakers. He gives us his word and sacrament through the vocation of pastors. He gives us so many of almost all of our blessings, he gives us through other people. He creates new life by means of mothers and fathers. So if that's how God is working, he works through human beings, there's always going to be a place for human beings. I mean, as we talk about the threat of AI and all the rest of it, we sometimes forget that God is doing things. One thing the Pope used was the image of the Tower of Babel as an image for human beings using technology to try to reach the heavens and make a name for themselves and all that. And it's actually a good analogy, a good thing to look at, although I don't think he really explores that as much as it deserves. But God judged the makers of the Tower of Babel. He didn't let them climb to heaven by their own efforts. He didn't let them make a name for themselves as they thought. He confounded that and confused their languages and forced people to move over the face of the earth instead of just staying on the plains of Shinar around their tower. So God is still sovereign. God is still at work. And I think he's at work in the blessings that we have from technology, the medical technology that's such a blessing today. We should thank God for that. Automobiles and air conditioners and all the things that make life easier for us in this time, we're to see those as blessings from God. Computers, word processors, I think these are blessings from God. AI, I think there's a point where it can be. But again, once we relinquish vocation to the machine, machines don't have a vocation. They don't have a calling. And so we can't expect God to work through those in the way that he does through human beings. But I think we need to always remember through all of this that God's in charge. God's ruling his kingdom of the left, even among people who don't know him. He's still the king. His will is done, is still done on earth as it is in heaven. And so I think that should give us confidence as Christians. It isn't that we're just a beleaguered little minority trying to protect ourselves. God is with us, and he's the one that is the king of the physical creation, the social world. He'll make things happen. It may involve judgment against some of the things that people are pursuing. And I think that we can expect to see that, frankly, and the people that totally give over their lives to these things and trying so desperately. One of the uses of AI, some of the tech elite is saying, is to cure death so that we'll never have to die. And you look at that, at their concern, their fear of death, and their fear really of so much, and they want to create something that will fill that void in their lives and give them eternal life, while turning their back on the one who really can give them actual eternal life. It's sad, and there's a judgment in that, and in the way some of these people live, and in their fears and the nature of their thoughts when they're by themselves. And it may manifest itself in a more dramatic way if all of what they're trying to build comes crumbling down. But as Christians, we have a perspective that we need to remember that should get us through all of this, whatever happens.
Finally, Dr. Veith, someone observed years ago, and I think it generally holds true, that be it Roman roads or the airplane or whatever it may be, God grants technology. He gives it to the church for the church to rightly use it in the propagation of the gospel. The world only gets to borrow this stuff and often abuses these gifts of God. Do you think that applies to artificial intelligence as well?
I think it applies. You certainly see that in the printing press, the first information technology that was so monumental. The printing press made the Bible available to everybody. It made the Reformation possible. It spread the gospel throughout, and it also created universal education, and all the benefits that have come from that. Is artificial intelligence, and certainly we say that with radio and television and podcasts and this technology, Christians have made really good use of it, as you yourself have, issues, etc. What's the role of artificial intelligence with that? Did he give that to the church? I don't know. I guess, again, what the church can do with it, I mentioned some of the helps that it can do in research and Bible study and finding things out. And the issue with artificial intelligence sort of goes beyond a lot of these other technologies because it purports to sort of take the place of a human being with a calling, with a vocation. And I think we have to be very careful about that, to remember that it's not human as much though it seems to be and sounds like a person. It's not. It's algorithms. It's an illusion. It's a simulation. Virtual reality is a simulation of actual reality. But the Christian lives in reality. That's what God has made. And we can make things too, but they don't have the same substance as the world God has made. What do you think, Todd?
My biggest concern about artificial intelligence, the world will abuse these technologies, but that it can also be abused in the church, that there are those that probably already are, who are, with the advent of kind of virtual church, online church, thinking up new ways to move the church away from the word and sacraments, these tangible means by which God saves sinners, into that virtual reality that with artificial intelligence can seem so real.
Yeah, that's a great point. I read something that talked about Gnosticism, how Gnosticism is back thanks to a lot of the new technology. Again, the virtual world, transcending the body. Some people look for the time that when we can just download our consciousness into the cloud, into the internet, and that's how we can have eternal life. But the body is something to get away from. The physical world is something that has limits. The new electronic world they're trying to create has no limits. And so, yeah, that's a very important tendency. And again, sacraments, they don't exist in the virtual world. I saw a virtual church service online and that had a baptism where the avatar in the virtual reality of a person went into a virtual pool and then was ducked underwater. But there wasn't water. It was just a picture of water. And that was the baptism. It was the avatar of the person at home, and it was told to duck down, and that would make it with your virtual reality headset on. And then on the screen, it looked like it went underwater. And that was the baptism. So, no, on baptism, Lord's Supper, Christ, the Word made flesh, the local church, local pastors, these ground us in the real world. And I think it's going to be really important that we keep that grounding and don't let ourselves use that by all the technological simulations that are being offered us today.
Dr. Gene Edward Veith is retired provost and professor of literature at Patrick Henry College, adjunct professor at Luther Classical College. He previously served as culture editor for World Magazine, director of the Cranach Institute at Concordia Theological Seminary, Fort Wayne, Indiana. He's co-author of the forthcoming book, Irreplaceable, Humanity, Vocation, and the Limits of Technology, and a recent column for the Lutheran Witness magazine titled The Pope Underestimates AI. You'll find a link to Dr. Veith's forthcoming book on the Talk On Demand archives page at issuesetc.org. Dr. Veith, thanks.
Okay, thanks for having me.
Tuesday on Issues Etc., we'll have Dr. Ben Mays respond to more of your questions and comments on divorce and remarriage, and we'll look forward to Sunday morning, according to the one-year lectionary, talking with Dr. John Bombaro about true and false prophets in Matthew chapter 7. I'm Todd Wilkin. Thanks for listening.
Listen weekday afternoons to Pastor Todd Wilkin and guests on Issues Etc. Issues Etc. is a listener-supported program. Your financial support is vital for the continuation and expansion of this worldwide outreach. Our mailing address, Issues Etc., P.O. Box 83, Collinsville, Illinois, 62234. Box 83, Collinsville, Illinois, 62234. You can also donate at our website, issuesetc.org. Issues Etc. is a production of LPR, Lutheran Public Radio.
Repentance and forgiveness, sin and grace, law and gospel, more than cliches, real preaching for real people in need of hearing the real Christ. Christ for You in the Divine Service at St. Paul Lutheran Church of Hamel, Illinois, where we gather every Saturday night at 6 and on the Lord's Day, Sunday mornings at 7:45 and 10. Look for the Church of the Neon Cross on I-55 between exits 30 and 33. Find us on the web, stpaullutheranchurchhamel.org, St. Paul Lutheran Church of Hamel, where there is the forgiveness of sins, life and salvation for the people of God.
For decades, Lutheran High School South in St. Louis dreamed of a performing arts center. One generous alum's $6.5 million gift made it possible. With financing help from Lutheran Church Extension Fund, the vision became reality. The Jubal Center for the Arts opened in 2025, and students immediately won 5 St. Louis Musical Awards. Learn how one gift sparked a ripple effect for Lutheran South at interesttime.org/south.
Criticism.
Thank God that it's 5:01 and the show is over.
Commendation.
I am not a Lutheran, but I regularly listen to Issues Etc. and thank you for putting this on the air.
Conundrum.
A Catholic friend has come to our LCMS church, and he said, "Why do you say very God, a very God?" And I couldn't think of a good answer.
The Issues Etc. comment line, 618-223-8382.
Hi, I'm Dr. Jay Krause, principal at Metro East Lutheran High School in Edwardsville, Illinois. Metro East Lutheran High School engages young adults in a Christ-centered environment, delivering academic excellence and spiritual growth to develop Christian leaders for tomorrow. We provide a Christ-centered alternative to public high schools. We're currently enrolling students for the 2026-2027 school year. Learn more at melhs.org, melhs.org.